Our guest today is a Triple Crown champion, a mother, an executive, and in my opinion, a remarkable human being. In 2016, at the height of her fame, she walked away. She did not retire from a sport. She did not retire from a life of maladaptive survival. Her words, not mine. She has effectively navigated disassociation, challenging relationships, shadows of difficulty, and risen to the top. She stands as a testament to resurrection, using functional medicine, high performance training, and motherhood to rewire a champion spirit. With us is MMA fighter, warrior, world champion, and one of great instincts and insight, Miesha Cupcake Tate. Miesha, Happy New Year to you, and thank you for joining us today. Miesha, I want to pose to you, who are you, who have you been, and where are you heading?
Well, I feel like the who are you question is always such a layered and dynamic question. It's never one that's easy for me to simplify in certain words. You know, I can say things about my, the roles that I play in life, which I certainly feel like is a part of the development of who I am. But maybe that's something that we don't exactly get an answer to until, maybe a little further down in life. I could say, I'm a mother, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm all these things. But I think if you were to strip away all the titles, I would say that I am a God-fearing woman. That's ultimately who I am, because I feel like that's a title that could never be stripped from me. You lose belts, you lose titles, you could not be something that you are today, but when it comes to your spiritual connection, and I think relationship with the higher power above, that is who I would say that I am. And that is who I hope and intend to always be moving forward. I think that God has played an incredible role in my life, not only giving me life, but saving my life. And I think there's points, when who I was, someone who was lost, that was missing connection. Again, I had plenty of titles. I was the UFC World Champion. I was, I'm a sister. I'm a daughter. I'm all of these things. A podcaster. But all of those things can be gone in a minute. So I think the foundation of who I am is deeper. It's more about the things that are not tangible, not not something that you can't see, hear, or smell or touch exactly. It's like the sense of being. My sense of being is a God-fearing woman, and that leads me in all the roles that attribute to the woman that people see me as, and the woman that I feel like I lead myself towards being a better version of myself every single day. But I would say that's really what I'm grounded in, is the spirituality.
Have you always been a God-fearing woman, or is this something that's come about after some trauma or some very difficult times?
I've always believed that there is a higher power, but simply believing that there's a higher power and actually connecting with that power are two vastly different experiences.
Sure.
Acknowledging that there's likely something out there that is bigger than we are is, I think most people do that. Of course, there's some people who don't. But I think most people, even if they are not Christian or they don't believe in God, or they don't know, they probably still have a sense that there's likely something out there that is bigger than us. And for me, I lost track of that. For a while, I felt like I knew that there was something bigger than me, but I did not have connection to the love and the, how do you explain that feeling? Like when you get connected spiritually, it's like you get to set down all the baggage and all the weight that you carry around with you every day.
Wow.
because you realize that Jesus has been walking alongside you the entire time, asking to carry the weight. And it's just like you just have the blinders up. And realizing that is just so nice to have that contribution in my life and just go, okay, here it is. Here you go, Jesus. Thank you for meeting me where I'm at. And thank you so much for taking the burdens off of my hands. Not that life is like seamless and perfect, because I don't think that's the point of being a Christian. I think the point of being a Christian is to have those hard moments and lean on your spirituality so that you may be guided in the way that best serves you and your community, as opposed to trying to hold on to things too tight and say, this is how I've got to do it. This is what and it's about me, me, me. When you realize that you can contribute to a bigger purpose, I just think that there's a sense of fulfillment in that is unparalleled, at least in my experience.
Nice. Can we hit pause and can I roll it back just a moment and ask a few questions?
Sure.
Was there a specific moment, or was there an incident or an activity that happened that created this enlightenment for you?
Oh, sure. Yes. Well, let's see. I was raised Catholic, so I was baptized and I did First Communion, but I didn't follow through with First Communion's around 7 years old, and then you usually have it's around 16 years old. I'm drawing a blank. Your confirmation. There's what it was. It's usually around 16 years old. And I never did follow through with the confirmation. I think at that point I had begun to lose interest in the church, at least. Now, being Catholic for me, when I went to church, I didn't necessarily feel like God was meeting me where I was at. I felt like it was a lot about tradition and like knowing what to do when you walked in. You've got to dip your hands in the water and you got to put the cross on your forehead, and then you've got to kneel before you get in the pew, and then or sign the cross, and then you got to do the prayer. There's all these like things that you have to do. That's like if you were just someone who was like lost and you were roaming around on the streets and you're like, you know what, I'm going to go to church today. You would not walk into a Catholic church necessarily and be like, oh, this is easy to do. Like you would stick out like a sore thumb. Okay. So, and when I'm not trying to pick on Catholics, I think there's, a lot of great things about a lot of other, religions and things like that. But what I'm saying is that God is meant to meet you where you are. And for me, when he met me where I was in a real moment of darkness when I had retired. I had literally just retired, like that night from fighting. I fought in Madison Square Garden on the first ever UFC event in November of 2016.
Yep.
And I had recently exited, I think it was 5 months earlier or something, I had exited a toxic relationship, but we were still very intertwined because we trained together, and he was like trying to convince me to get back together. And so like my whole camp for that fight was very tumultuous. I was trying to break free, but I realized that if I stayed in the sport, I couldn't break free, or I didn't have the strength or the ability to not have the tie-ins of the relationship. It was just too intertwined. And so on that night, I lost that fight because I was just mentally in a really terrible place. I was trying to leave a toxic relationship that was hanging on to me with its claws in. And I didn't perform at all. I felt like it was like an out-of-body experience.
Yep.
And then I retired that night because I wanted to cut ties mostly with the relationship. But I also felt like prior to that, MMA had always kind of been my salvation. Fighting had been my salvation. It was the way that I got through the hard times because I valued so much winning and being a winner, quote unquote, that it would kind of slap a Band-Aid or mask the problems and issues that I wasn't willing to deal with. I wasn't willing to do the work on myself. I didn't really know how, much less did I even want to admit that I needed to do work on myself because it didn't help me win fights. And all I wanted to do was win fights. So on that night when I retired, I didn't know who I was. I was no longer a fighter. And that's the only way that I really knew how to identify myself. And on that night, I felt the most alone I've ever felt in my life. And even the week or so after, a few weeks, months after, I was still struggling. But it was that moment alone when you have no one else to turn to, and you kind of remember, you're like, I used to pray. I used to ask God for help, and I used to ask God for guidance, and I used to have a relationship with God, and I don't have one now. I haven't, spoken in this way to God, or been open, or continued any kind of conversation with God in a really long time. And what I did know about God was that He's supposed to be there for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I said, God, um, would you help me in this moment? I don't know. I don't know what to do. I don't know who I am. I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do. And I don't want to die, but I don't want to live like this.
Right. Right.
So I said, can you help me out? And it was just like a sense of relief. Not that I knew how to fix things, and I knew that I still had a really long way to go, but it was like somebody grabbed my hand, and it was kind of that warmth of like we can get through this, like you're not alone. And it was just powerful for me. And He led me to connect with my family again and my friends. And through that human connection, it strengthened my spiritual connection. And that's really what it all started with.
Was that moment a surrender? Did you feel like you were surrendering yourself to this higher power, or was it more like gaining a companion?
That's a great question. In a way, I had nothing left to give. And I think when you have nothing left to give, then you can quit or you can surrender. You can give up or you can give in. And I think I was giving in. I wasn't
Interesting.
giving up. I was giving in. But I didn't know exactly how to do that. So even though it was like I was giving in, I didn't know what that meant. It was just out of sheer desperation. So luckily I had a pretty great God on my side to help me through a lot of it, and a lot of
Yeah.
friends and family, which I think God works through and in. So it was the start of a really long climb out of a really dark place, but it was like a pinhole of light in a pitch black room. It's like, well, I think that's the only way I can go.
Yes. The limited opportunities we've had to speak. I've gotten to know you, and you've used words like "do the work," and I'm comfortable being discomforted. So I can appreciate that you're not one to give up. So I
Yeah.
appreciate the giving in and what that might represent. At that point in time, there was a physical exhaustion from the fight, but it sounds like you were emotionally spent. Had there been a lot of compounded trauma that got to this point? And were you also isolated from family because you were so focused on the fight game, or is that a broader isolation that had happened?
It was a broad isolation over a long period of time, because my ex that I was dating at the time didn't get along with my family. And I saw fault on both sides. I wouldn't say that it was all one or the other, or, that my family was perfect and they didn't, deserve any wrongdoing whatsoever. I mean, there certainly was both, but that wasn't helpful. That was really hard for me because I was dealing with, it was like a tug of war. That's how it felt. It was like a tug of war between my mom and my ex. And of course, as we mature and we develop and we're supposed to leave the nest and start our own families, if you have to choose one to let go of to stop the pulling,
Yeah.
it's going to be the parents, unfortunately. But my mom was doing the best that she knew how, so I don't place blame there. I don't place blame on my ex either. I think he was a damaged child in his own right, and he was looking for someone to fill the shoes, of like a mother type role, I think. And, but it doesn't, what I've realized is that you don't have to excuse people's behaviors, but it helps to understand them,
Yes.
right?
And
Because
yeah.
then you can forgive. And I don't have to, justify his behaviors, but I understand that it came from a place of trauma, fear, um, maladaptive coping skills on his part too. So, it ultimately at the end, I'm just grateful that I came out stronger for it, that I didn't give up, and that I was able to find the light when that was just one of the most difficult things that I've had to do.
Was this the fight where you speak about having the disassociative experience where you were fighting, but
Yeah.
you weren't in body, but you were there in body? So you
Yeah.
almost shut down, but your mind was overtaxed. So this was the Amanda Nunes fight that we're talking about?
This one was actually the Raquel Pennington fight.
Okay.
So that was the one after I had lost my belt that I had one of the worst dissociative moments in my fighting career. Because in the fights prior, I still think I had I was like on my way to breaking. I would say like I really was starting my downhill slide actually for a long time, but I was vigorous enough. I had enough vigor in me to manage it up until probably the Holly Holm fight.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, in that fight was my last moment of feeling like I could still barely manage. Like, I mean, if I were in an ocean, I was being pulled under, but I was getting small sips of air.
Got it.
And the other two fights after that, I was just completely under the water. Because you just lose strength after time, I mean, you can only endure things like that for so long before the exhaustion just captivates you. It swallows you up.
Yeah. So that was really the realization that winning doesn't fix a broken or a toxic foundation.
Yes. And that was the worst part, but the best part was that when I fought Holly Holm in 2016, I thought that if I had gotten the belt, and I became the world champion, which is what I had been seeking for many, many years and dedicating my life to, that I would finally be fulfilled. I would finally be happy. But the truth is, once I got the belt, that's when everything really broke, because I realized it was all an illusion, that the belt fixed nothing. The title fixed nothing. The money fixed nothing. The fame surely fixed nothing. And there's something that changes, I think, in you when you realize that everything that you thought would be is not. And then you're like, what? So you kind of, it's like the Goldilocks thing for me. It was like, I was, coming into this and I was like really hot and I was like really sure and I was going to win this fight and it was going to fix everything. And then it was like ice cold, because I realized that there was nothing that of this physical possessions, all of the things, the car, the house, whatever, none of that was going to fix anything. And once I realized that, I kind of went into like a deep depression.
Yeah.
But I thought, well, if I could just win again, because again, I'm not processing this from a healthy mind. I am processing this from, well, what worked before? When I was depressed before, when I was sad before, I would just book another fight and I would win and I would be happy. Like that would make me happy. But there was so much more underneath that. That was just such a superficial fix. It just really didn't leave me with anything at the end. So, this, it's like drinking caffeine when you're tired, or something like that. It's like, yeah, it might get you through the drive, but like, is it going to help you tomorrow? No. Like, are you going to feel more rested tomorrow? Probably not. Especially if you're missing out on the sleep, and then you compound that. It's just like, okay, well, it can help in a quick moment, but it doesn't help you in the long term. Like, doesn't help you restoratively,
I do. And the disassociation, I would imagine, was both a superpower and a curse, because if you could disassociate, you could blunt some of the pain, the physical pain that you feel being punched and choked and pulled on, but the emotional turmoil and the disassociation could be quite frightening. I've had some other guests that have spoken about having these out-of-body experiences. And thankfully, you were able to rein it in, because some disassociation can go long-term and you could be completely disconnected from who you are and what your reason for being is. So I appreciate that. And that can also lead to all sorts of addictions, which is
yeah.
a really dark side.
I think all people that struggle or suffer with addictions have things that they haven't unpacked or dealt with yet. And so they are just trying to numb. I'm a huge fan of Dr. Gabor Mate. I love his work. He is a MD and a trauma specialist. And he talks about addiction in itself. And if you think of the root cause of addiction, then you will understand why it is. You understand why, because I think he is quoted saying that there was a heroin addict who was asked to describe what taking heroin was like for him. And they're like, it's like getting a warm hug from your mom.
Wow.
And so these people are hurting, and they are trying to find their way. They're trying to self-medicate. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to feel better. And that's what they're doing. They're just short-sighted. They don't understand that that's not actually a solution. But in that moment, it helps. And sometimes that's why they do it, right? I think most people do have any kind of addiction because in that moment, you feel good. And don't we all want to feel good? Is it a crime to want to feel good? No, it's not. It's like all humans want to feel good. The sad part is that they haven't found the actual healing that's actually going to make them feel good without the substance, without the addiction. For me, that was spiritual.
For sure. And my words, not yours, but what I've taken from you is it's okay to be good, but not to feel good. And
well, I would say no, I would say that most people want, we seek things that help us feel good, and that's not a crime. That's not wrong. So what I'm trying to do is get people to look at people with addiction with empathy. I'm trying to get people to understand that instead of being like, oh, that person just made poor choices or to judge, instead of judging these people, try to understand that it's very simple. You like to feel good. I like to feel good. Every person on this planet deserves to feel happiness, to feel good. And the most broken people on this earth are often the ones that have the worst severe addictions because they have been hurt the most. And we continue to hurt these people by not understanding that the way to help someone out of that place, of course they have to be willing, is through love and empathy, not through more punishment and more trauma and more pain in their life. That's why they're already there in the first place. I don't think that any healthy, argue me this, I don't think any healthy, loved, well-balanced person, and maybe a healthy relationship with God, you can add that in there too, is an addict. But I think that there might be people that have addictive little things that they do that's fun or whatever, but that maybe doesn't spin their life. But I'm talking about a full-blown addict to the point where they're on the streets or they are addicted to drugs, they can't work. Because I think people who have worked through their trauma or been able to or been afforded to or have a relationship with God or a good relationship and connections with people and they've worked through those things, usually don't turn to substance because we don't need it we don't need it to be our short fix. We've actually fixed ourselves, and I think every single person is capable of that. So I just encourage people to look at people that have or struggle with addiction. This could be a gambling addiction.
Yeah.
This could be a porn addiction. This could be a food addiction. This could be an alcohol addiction. This could be a drug addiction. There are degrees of debilitating behaviors.
Yep.
And I just think that most people who have been able to do the work on themselves and really, whether it's through cognitive behavior therapy, whether it's, having a relationship with God, and I'm not talking about going to church and tithing. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about having a prayer and a true heartfelt ask a conversation. That's all it takes. It's free. You don't have to be inside of a religious building. You could just talk to God and ask God for guidance. A relationship with your friends, you know, your family, those people that mean a lot to you. I think that you will find a way out of that dark place, even if you are struggling with addiction, because when you ask for it, it finds you. It's the craziest thing. When you ask for the help, when you ask for the guidance, when you ask the questions, even if you don't have the answers, you don't even know all the questions, but you start with something. Mine, for example, was like, I don't want to live like this anymore. How do I not do that? And that is a very broad question. How do you not be where you are? How do I not do that? And what slowly came to me was like, I remember I went home, I packed up my car and I just started driving.
Yes.
And I let the things come to me. And I would pass through an area and be like, don't I have an old friend that, you know, lived in this area? Or like I'm just driving up the coast, and I was being pulled towards my family again. So I was going from Vegas to Washington. And so I was driving up the coast, and I just connected, and I just stopped, and I hiked in nature, and I just let things come to me. That what it was that was healing about that process was letting go of the reins of control and just saying, I'm just going to head, and I'm just going to be, and I'm just going to see what happens. And what happened is that I ended up finding myself in all of it.
Well, thank goodness. Many don't. And I appreciate the journey that you took on that. If I could back up for just a second, we talked about addiction. Do you believe they're healthy addictions?
Do I believe that there are healthy addictions? I personally do not. I am anti-vice, anti-addiction.
So as an MMA fighter with a singular focus on the sport, would some say that's an addiction because there's not a lot of room for balance when you're in training camp or on the runway to a title fight?
Yes, and I don't think it's healthy.
Okay. Yeah, I've got friends that are ultra marathoners, and some have been addicts that substituted ultra running for, you know, they're substituting one vice for another. Society
and
says something.
There are quote unquote healthier, you know, but that's just all up to interpretation.
Yeah.
Because we can say, because we find one addiction inspiring, that it is better than this addiction. And maybe it is, but maybe it's not. Maybe not healing trauma is just as unhealthy no matter what you do. Right? Not moving through your things is ultimately not as healthy. Sure, running and moving your body and exercising, everybody agrees that that's quote unquote healthy, but I'm not just talking about the physical. I'm talking about the emotional. I'm talking about the need for validation, the need to do something that causes you to either feel distress or feel like, you know, to validate yourself. Like you have to push yourself so hard in these moments that sometimes those battles you have with yourself is like, it's addicting because you need to know that you can do it. You need to constantly push yourself harder and further. And it gets sickening at times.
It gets exhausting. You don't give yourself a break.
It gets exhausting and you hurt yourself physically.
Sure.
I mean, these ultra marathoners guarantee run themselves into injuries. You know, literally, and they just won't give up. And it's admirable. I'm not saying that it's not, but I guess there's multiple ways of looking at this. And I think that anything that is an addiction is not healthy for us.
Everything in moderation, some say, but can you be a world champion at the peak of your profession, whether it's the fight game or business or creative, if you're not maniacal and singularly focused to the point where someone says you're addicted?
Well, you know, I had this question. I actually discussed this a little bit with Dr. Edwards on Built for Growth. That's my podcast. I know you know that, but for the listeners. And I love this kind of question because it really requires a lot of mulling over. And you may not find the answer to a lot of questions that you ask yourself, but let's talk about this one immediately. But it's fun to talk about this. So here is what I have sort of processed and kind of like what's shaken out in this whole thought of like, if you're not obsessed and if you're not addicted and if you're not maniacal, could you actually be a world champion? Because that's what it seems like it takes. So I think that my first unpacking was no. I didn't think so, because I remembered like the first time I went on a spiritual journey, I took mushrooms. And I really went like on a deep dive on that one. I think I took like 3, what is it? 3, I don't remember what the measurement is. Ounces? Is that right? No, that sounds like a lot. 3 grams? There you go. It was done by a professional. So whatever it was like 3 of the 4. Like you could take 4 and that's like a pretty heavy dose. I took 3 of the 4, which was still enough to really send me into like some spiritual unpacking. But after that, my levels of empathy, my levels of connection, they all really went up. And then I did a ketamine treatment with Dr. Edwards. And
Wow.
that kind of like did a similarly, just kind of made me appreciate the life that I have here, wanting to get the most out of it and connecting with people. The degrees of separation of people that are not me or my family became much smaller. I feel like we are all connected.
Wow.
That's what I really walked away with from those experiences. And, thinking back on that, it made me soft, if you will.
What does that mean?
And it means that I was so empathetic and loving that it was like you took the fight out of the dog.
I gotcha.
So in sport, after my next fight, I remember was quite a bit flat. And I was like, wow, I am not sure that I know how to fight healed. Like I'm not all the way healed. I mean, I still had plenty of work to do, but I had let go of some really big drivers and trauma and things that you have to work through, adversity. Those things can be huge drivers, usually are for athletes. So when I had removed that, I hadn't found something else to put in its place. So remember we talked about addiction earlier when we were like, oh, so, some people move from this addiction to this one and we think it's healthier. Well, the same thing applies with healing. You can't just, at least I haven't found a way to remove something, like take the weight off and not put something else in its place, or it's just blank. And blank for me was kind of flat. I hadn't found the other driver or the other thing to put back in this place and heal this void. So I had let go of the stuff, but I didn't know how to be a fighter without those things.
Wow. Yes. So like I'm spinning, just trying to keep up with you. This is amazing stuff. So the killer instinct almost got dulled through this awakening, which made you a healthier, more soulful person, if I'm listening. But you still needed that angst or that drive, that fire that allowed you to tune it out and dial it in so that you're crushing in the fight game. And so do you attribute this to finding Jesus and religion and the broader perspective?
I attribute it to healing in general. I attribute it to those spiritual journeys, which I do believe brought me closer to the Creator. But here's the positive spin on this. So I feel like in life, there's a lot of these ebb and flows. And sometimes when we're at a very high point, we have to experience a very low point to experience another high point. And that is to give us perspective. It's not always meant to be easy. If it were always meant to be easy, we wouldn't have very much opportunity to be like Christ, would we? Jesus' constant journey was challenge after challenge after challenge. That's all that he did. And he, through that, displayed to us, showed us how to be the right way, right? Was to move through those situations and to be kind and still not lose sight of yourself and love others. So he's just like a prime example of that. But so I think every challenge for us is an opportunity to be more the way that God intended us to be. And for me, that challenge there of like not having like kind of the fight in the dog anymore was to put back a healthy thing, a healthy driver. And so I started doing things like going to cognitive behavioral therapy.
Oh, wow.
That was huge for me. That really gave me the skills that I needed to become the best version of myself. So I healed from trauma, but how do I move through life like this now? Like, how do you, nobody tells you how to just not use the same things that you've used to cope with trauma your whole life, even if you've let go of a lot of the trauma. How do you actually move into this new person? Because
Right.
remember, I used the term maladaptive coping skills, and you kind of said that earlier.
Yeah.
Okay. So these skills that I had developed served me really well in this period of time in my life because I had objectives like winning fights. And so disassociation was great. It was perfect because my objective was to win fights over anything else. So when something hard would happen, disassociate. When you would get punched, disassociate.
Yeah.
When you would get into a fight, a brutal, argument, it wasn't physical, argument with your ex, when you were emotionally, just at a super down point, disassociate, go somewhere else. Be somewhere else. Just be out of your body. Like that way you don't really have to absorb any of what's really going on. That was how I got through it. And it worked great until that wasn't what I wanted anymore. Then I would move through life. I retired. I was broken. I was exhausted. I was tired of fighting for the sips of air. So I let go of it all and I started to heal. But then I didn't know how to not disassociate. I would be at like dinner with friends and I would just be somewhere else. Like I wouldn't remember these things. I'll tell you, the week of that fight, when I retired, when we were in New York, I had a lot of friends that came out to New York to support me. And like, we went out that night and, we supposedly, we all hung out. I don't remember it. I don't remember the people being there. I don't remember my friends being there. I don't remember who was there, most of them. So I was clearly just so stuck in this state of disassociation that I started applying it to even healthy situations. It became toxic for me. And, I would just not remember these. And I know it's not, people will be like, well, she got hit in the head for a living. I'm like, good point. But, but in all honesty, I remember things much better now because I'm present. That's what I learned at cognitive behavioral therapy.
Yeah.
I started learning how to have skills that actually help me develop into the person that I wanted to be. Even though I'd let go of my trauma, doesn't mean that I knew how to like incorporate my new actions into a healthy way. I was still doing things the old way just because of nothing, because of no reason.
For sure.
I just didn't know how.
It's a centering and it's a grounding, and it's very difficult for the majority of the world to stay present in the moment. Most people are so anxious because they're worrying about something that hasn't happened, or they're so stuck in worrying about what did take place in the past that they're not here now in the present. So I appreciate this grounding that you're talking about in this.
Yeah. Can I talk about one of my favorite things? So his name's Micah, and he works for the UFC. So the UFC provides him for us, which is amazing. So I started going to him, and one of my favorite things that he would do is he gave me this packet of orange stickers, round stickers. And, he was like, go and stick these around, like stick one on your steering wheel, stick one on your door, stick one wherever you want. And then every time you go by it, just check in with yourself. Like, how are you feeling? And just take note of it. And that started to teach me to be more present and think about the way that I was feeling in that moment. And if I was feeling off, let's notice it. Let's think about it, label it. If I had an intrusive thought, let's think about it, label it. And then let's process it in a healthy manner, as opposed to just disassociating, disappearing, choosing not to be present, to be somewhere else. Let's address it and let's move through it in a healthier way. And so things like taking a deep breath. Or 3 deep breaths. I mean, it's free and it's unbelievable how underrated that is.
Yep.
Our breath is the only way that we can manually override fight or flight.
Yep.
So it's really easy. We should all connect to our breath a little bit more. I'll take a deep breath every once in a while when I'm just dealing with kids in the back, or just, maybe something stressful, an email, a text, I'm feeling overwhelmed. And my daughter will be like, hey, Mom, are you stressed? She'll notice it now because she notices my deep breath, because that's my attempt to regulate myself. And so she's begun finding that connection, that when she notices that I'm stressed, she'll notice that I'm taking a deep breath. And we work on breathing together too. Her and I, like, getting through hard times, taking deep breaths. She's crying and I'll co-breathe with her. I'll just help her out. I'll just be somebody to take deep breaths next to her. And sometimes I ask her to take the breaths with me, but sometimes if she's too dysregulated, I just breathe I breathe calmly. I take deep breaths, and I just let her kind of notice that that's what I'm doing to deal with that situation and to try to help her pick up on it. And they do. Kids are so cool. Like, they're so resilient. They're so smart, and they pick up on those things. My son, I remember he fell out of, I was at training, Johnny and I were training together, and he was young, and he fell out of the secondary octagon, and he, like, I don't know what but he had blood. I mean, it was just like all down his face. And so I sweep him up, I take him to the bathroom, I'm staying really calm, and I just start taking deep breaths. And he's crying, and he's waiting to kind of see, he's young, he's 3. So he's waiting. Obviously, kids kind of wait to see what your reaction's going to be. And I just start taking deep breaths, and he's crying, and all of a sudden he just starts taking deep breaths.
Wow.
And then we cleaned up the blood. We're like, it's okay. I was like, Baba, this is just what your body does when you get hurt. Like, blood comes out. It's okay. It's nothing to be scared of. And it was just so cool because he just adapted like that. Like, he was panicked, and, I was able to just help him regulate through breath. So it's so powerful. And then other things like mindful meals, which just means like actually sitting down and being present with my food, trying to engage all 5 of my senses. That's a great way to practice it. We all usually eat on the run.
Yes.
Like, how many years that my butt did not hit a seat for a meal?
Yes.
Like, ever, like years. I would just eat on the fly. I would like inhale my food and be like, gotta go. So like sitting down and actually experiencing your food, smelling your food, taking time to notice the colors of the food, feel the texture of the food, we don't pay attention to that stuff. And food's actually only more enjoyable when we do that. Mindful showers is another one. Next time you're in your shower, you can practice that for 30 seconds or 2 minutes or whatever. Try to be present. And here's also what my therapist would tell me is that when you get you're trying to practice a mindful moment, it's going to be like you have your balloon and you're holding it. Okay. And then the mind is going to wander because that's what the mind does. And that's when you've let go of your balloon and the balloon is starting to float off. Now, your job is not to stop the balloon from ever floating off. It's not to stop your mind from ever wandering. It is to notice when your balloon has gone, when your mind is wandering, and get it back. That's the whole point of the drill.
So let me ask this question.
Like, how often can you bring yourself back to being present?
With that drill, does the why enter the conversation? Why is the balloon floating off, or is it more a matter of reclaiming the grounding?
Just reclaiming the grounding. Yeah, right. It's our brains are not meant to singularly focus on one thing at a time ever. For very long, right? Our brains are just so vast and meant to deal with so many things and curious. But here's the thing: it's like sometimes when you can just get really present for a moment, and then you make space for more important processing to come in. Wow. Because it's like everything gets kind of quiet and like kind of dialed down. That maybe the subconscious things that you might need to think about a little bit, you may need to address, those might have a moment to be present. And that is healing, even if it's just for 30 seconds. But that quieting, because I know so many people that can't do a workout, they can't fall asleep, they can't sit in a sauna, they can't do those things without constant noise or distraction. They have to have music on, a podcast on. They have to be on their phone. They very rarely do people these days, because our brains are processing so much all the time, which is one of the downsides of technology, I think, is that our brain processing power, we have to keep up with so much more than we probably were really intended to. I mean, when God put Adam and Eve on this earth, imagine the amount of things that they probably had to think about versus like, even in this day, the amount of things that you and I have had to think about. So I'm just saying, like, it's just a different world we live in. And sometimes there's just a huge benefit to finding little moments to slow down and find ways to be present. And then when you could do that, you could tap into it whenever you want to. Let's say now, so here's Miesha is disassociating at dinner with friends. Okay. Now I'm aware that I do it because I have a little kind of balloon like idea in my mind that like, oh, I'm somewhere else right now. What am I doing? Hey, let me bring this back. I want to find a way to be engaged in this conversation. So I remember it because these people matter to me and this moment matters to me. The next moment's not guaranteed. And the past moment basically doesn't exist because I'll never go back to it. It's only right here, right now. So that's what I've learned from that. And then being present in that moment that's how I get present again. And then the more you do that, the easier it is to do it.
So, Miesha, wow, the level of insights. Well, let me pause. Please commit to writing a book this year for us.
That would be great.
No, I'm very serious.
I do have it on a list. I haven't thought about doing it this year, but I will do it.
Whether I got to introduce you to a ghostwriter to do it with you or not, this is a book. This needs to be published. It can be an audio, but and the reason I say that is whether you're going through a divorce or a separation or an unemployment or the loss of a career or a loss of a loved one, these seminal moments, these tribulations, these trials are put before all of us. And they're put before all of us repeatedly, and how we respond to them. And what you're offering is a template on how to navigate these uncertainties. And I appreciate it. Your words, just reinterpreting on this, start with a grounding. Find synchronicity with those that you love. Build bridges near and far. Sometimes you have to get lost to find your way. All those cliches come rushing back, but there's a grace and an ease with which you're providing them. So first, I want to celebrate this clarity. I absolutely want to talk to you in detail about the mushrooms and the ketamines and the spiritual journey, but that's a whole nother podcast. And I'll get Dr. Edwards here to dose me out massively when he can. No, I'm just joking. Well, not really, but it's amazing. And I appreciate your journey, and one that was at the absolute top of a violent sport. It's a violent, the fight in the dog, the killer instinct, the professionalism that goes into it, and the humility with which you now are sharing your story to a broader audience. So I hope those that are listening are able to rewind and say, wow, here's some breathing skills. Cold therapy can help. The stickers, the dots, these are all mental models that can help others navigate the uncertainty. There's also something I heard you repeatedly say on some other podcasts, and that was that you were comfortable when things are not easy.
Right.
And is that something that comes from being in the fight game? Is that something in your DNA? Because many people don't hug that concept.
Yeah. And I think more people should start to try to do that, because I think it's very important and very valuable to people to know that they can do hard things. Not everybody knows that they can do hard things because they have developed what I would consider a maladaptive coping skill, oftentimes to try to avoid hard things, right? If life was really hard when you were growing up, you may have tried to avoid it at all costs. That may have been your skill set. And maybe if you could avoid some of those hard things, that was better. I mean, I think about the abuse that goes on in like homes with children and things like that, brutal. I mean, what if a child was sexually abused at home, and avoiding that situation as much as possible was the best outcome for them? Of course, then that is, I have my own maladaptive coping skills as well. But all I'm saying is that if you are trying to constantly avoid every hard situation, then that skill set that you have, whether, however it applied to your life in whatever situation, may not be serving you the best now, because we were meant to do hard things. We were built to do hard things. And when we know we can do hard things, we can face our fears. And we could say, yeah, I'm scared. Like, this is scary for me. I'm scared to do this. And I can. And I will.
That's great.
And that's powerful.
There's a quote in the book Dune about, and I won't go into the soliloquy, but it's about, I will face my fear. And paraphrasing, when it leaves, only I will remain. So I do appreciate that. Miesha, we started the conversation with a 3-part question, and who are you becoming is the third part. And I'd like to share a little bit of feedback just from this conversation with you, if I may.
Yes.
I think you're a thought leader. I think you've compartmentalized and then opened up the challenges that you've confronted. And I think your greatest belt and victory is going to become, and is still yet to be realized. I think that's coming forth through your podcast and the entrepreneurial work you're doing. I'm very interested to see how you capture the killer instinct and still have the humility and humbleness and grace that comes with it, because I think there's going to be a balance, and the person that can unlock that narrative is going to be offering even more to the world. But I really am deeply grateful for you. I'm glad that the circumstances didn't take you out, and I'm, in a strange way, thankful that you, and this sounds kind of weird, but I'm thankful that you had to go through that.
Oh,
Because
I am very much.
I think if you
Yeah.
just kept winning the belts and kept
Yeah.
making the money, I think that this problem would have just kept rolling down the line.
Yeah. It would have been kicking the can down the road.
Yeah. So, wow. Great stuff. You've provided so much for our audience that I would encourage people to re-listen to this and stop and take a note and fast forward as
And
such.
and Miles, can I plug in one more
Please.
thing here? I really want to put a little emphasis or an asterisk too on how this affects women.
Okay.
Now, I can only speak from experience as a woman, okay? But what I do know through my lived experience and through science is that women are vastly different than men in the way that our hormones function. So, men, I believe, were made by design to deal with more stressful situations. You guys have consistent hormones for the most part. You're on like a 24-hour hormone cycle, and you have a wonderful hormone that's, primary is testosterone. And it is like a badass hormone. It is a conquering, like, I'm going to go out and like slay the dragon kind of hormone. Like, you guys are just like ready to take on the world. And us as women, we often try to operate in a man's world with what we think is expected of us from like male structure. Like, everything is kind of structured in a male way. And this is not a knock at all on men. I think men are just fantastic and underappreciated. I'm so sick of the toxic masculinity talk, I could puke. But like, I love men. I think men are incredible and deserve way more credit. So this isn't about that. It is about understanding and appreciating the differences between the two of us. So the way that I understand women's hormones is that we are much more affected by things like stress than our male counterparts. And when we are affected, it takes 28 days for us to get a chance to make our hormones right again.
Wow.
So if you go to a hormone doctor, you're an easy fix, right? The males in general will be like, bang, I know exactly how to fix this. Women, it takes months. Why? Because we cycle through all these different hormones, through all these different phases of our cycle. And so when we are not mindful of that, when we train the way that I trained as an athlete, we really do damage to ourselves. It affects our fertility tremendously. Okay, so when we are training and we are not mindful and we're in a caloric deficit and we're just pushing ourselves and cutting weight and doing all these things, or even just regular women who are stressed beyond what is healthy, we fail to ovulate. So we actually don't mature an egg or develop an egg. Wow. So there are women out there right now and husbands who are trying to have children and don't understand that her working a night shift, her being overstressed, her not being supported in different phases of her cycle. And really, we could simplify this down to two: the follicular phase and the luteal phase. So if you don't understand this, let me just give you a little breakdown real quick, okay?
Yeah.
Follicular phase is the day that she starts her period. For about 2 weeks. Okay. That's usually actually a fairly good phase for women because our estrogen starts to like come out more and more. We actually have like more energy. It's a little bit more of an extroverted time. Then we have like our ovulation in the middle, which is like primo. Women's sex drive is up. We feel like we can crush it in the gym. Our testosterone is at its peak, which is very minimal compared to even what you guys experience on a daily basis. But hey, it's there. And we're feeling great. We're ready to conquer the world. We're like, yes, this is the best week ever. Then we move into the luteal phase, and it's kind of like the polar opposite. We start to kind of slowly slip into a conservatory phase. Being a woman is metabolically expensive. we burn about an extra like 150 to 300 calories per day. I think it's an average of 172 calories a day more in our luteal phase. Have you ever heard that before? How many women are trying to diet so hard in their luteal phase and they don't realize that they're actually burning more calories for free, and by taking those, removing those calories, that they're actually hurting their hormone production, which then has this catastrophic effect on how we feel and operate. Our depression, all these things. So
Wow.
all I'm saying is that it's that we don't have enough time to really get super in detail, and I know we didn't even necessarily plan on going there.
Great.
But if women could learn a little bit more about their biology, actually, I have this book sitting right here. This is so funny. This is called The Period Brain. Okay, this is by Dr. Sarah E. Hill. This is a phenomenal book because it talks about how the cycle affects the brain and the body.
Wow.
And there's not enough research out there, but what there is certainly needs to reach more people, especially if you are a female athlete. But I really think if you're a female in general, and guys, there's a lot to learn here too, because how many times have you guys listening, gone to your wife and literally from like last week to this week, her response to nearly the same question is completely different. Okay. Completely different reaction. And you're like, what did I do wrong? Like what? But what you don't realize is that in her luteal phase, no matter what, her body is metabolically expensed. Okay. She is giving more than she's receiving. Her body's just doing that to her anyways, because it's preparing for pregnancy, whether she likes it or not. Okay, whether she likes it or not, every single time her body's preparing to carry a child. That is difficult. And when it's already difficult, and then you come along and you are oblivious and you ask her something really difficult, then she's just like, because her body doesn't, it's just like she's already, like the molehill feels like a mountain to her. So what she needs from you is to take a little bit off of her plate, to help her out, to calm her down, to ask her less, just do like, and so I think if guys could even learn to navigate this a little bit, everybody wins.
Wow.
Everybody wins. But if you're an athlete and you do this wrong, I'm telling you right now, there's a price to pay. I've been there. I've experienced amenorrhea, which is a loss of the cycle because I was just so calorically in a deficit for long periods of time and cutting weight. And it takes from your quality of life. It just literally feels like it's sucking the life out of you. And that's just, we have a blessing. We have a blessing, an absolute blessing. To be a woman, I think is a wonderful experience, but it helps to understand it for all parties. It helps to understand it.
You know what's remarkable? You bring this trifecta to the conversation as I'm listening to you, and I hadn't thought about those things ever. And shame on me because I was raised by women.
They probably didn't know either, though. You know how I learned this late in my life too.
It's amazing.
Women have been incredibly overlooked in the medical field. Did you know? I'll just divert. I'll steer off the topic one quick time.
Please.
And I hope but in science, that a lot of times when mice are studied, and I learned this from a scientist himself when I was speaking at UC Irvine for a brain health conference, that when they study the mice, that they will oftentimes take the female mice and take their cycle out of it. They'll sterilize them. That's the word I was looking for. They'll sterilize the female mice because the estrous cycle skews the data, and they don't get double the grants to study male and females. Okay, they say, no, we're going to give you one grant and you have to study women because women need to be studied too. And they'll say, the scientists will go, but women and women are different. Even male and female mice are different. And if she's in this phase of her cycle, it messes up all the data for the guys too. So like we're both losing. So they'll just sterilize the female mice so that they don't get the skewed data. And I get that because it's kind of like their hands are tied, but it's also very misleading and unfair. There is a strong argument and a potential that women taking certain medications in their luteal phase, it will affect them differently than it will in their follicular phase. Wow, talk about mind blowing. I mean, it needs to be studied more, and it also needs to, I think, be understood a little bit more. And I don't think anybody's at fault here, men or women. but it's just helpful to get this knowledge out there. We just don't know. Women don't know, because we assume that when we're included in a study, we're included in a study, like, female mice. It's mostly that are being sterilized, but that, when this data comes out and says, oh, this SSRI, works this way. Well, did you account for the fact that progesterone goes up like 2,500% as opposed to estrogen? We never hear about progesterone. Progesterone's in the luteal phase. We get like something like a 900% increase of estrogen in our follicular phase and something like a 2,500% increase of progesterone in the luteal phase. But they don't study us in our luteal phase. They study us only in the estrogen phase. They sterilize so that we stay out of an estrous cycle.
Oof.
So medications could be different. Like even our absorption through our intestines, like our soft muscles they work differently. So, I mean, it's vast and it's interesting. And I can't wait to dive more into that, as that's where I feel like my passion is leading me. So when you're saying like, who are the women that you're going to become? I want to become an advocate to understand the female body more, having lived experience and lived failure and lived, trying to train just like the guys and pretending like it doesn't affect me. I only think hurt me. I really only believe that hurt me. And I remember the one time that this will bring all of this full circle. The one time that I understood that my cycle well enough to schedule a fight right during ovulation. Okay, so I scheduled it when I had the highest peak of testosterone, the most aggressive, the most explosive, and the most mentally attuned that I could be as a woman. I scheduled that fight right during ovulation. I hit the mark right on the mark. And I had already had this experience with mushrooms and ketamine and kind of went through this weird lull where I didn't know what to put in place of it. And then I kind of healed and I started using all these tools to become a better, more fulfilled, spiritually grounded, well-rounded woman with purpose and drive in other areas that were healthy. And I met the best version of myself that night in the octagon. And I fought Julia Vila December 3rd. And it was the most amazing experience of my life. And then you know what happened? Because God has a sense of humor. I tore 2 ligaments in my knee that night.
Oh.
Uh-huh. Talk about a punch to the gut. It was like, oh, I finally figured it out. Like, I mean, synergistically, I was just on fire. I think I could have beat any woman on the planet that night. Any woman. It just happened to be Julia Vila that was standing in front of me. I was so just grounded and emotionally in tune, and I was very present in every single moment of that fight. I knew exactly what I wanted out of all the moments in that fight, and it was just incredible, like the best experience. And I was so aggressive, and I was on her back, and I was like going for these chokes, and I just went to like flatten her out, and I tore 2 ligaments in my own knee. The most dominant fight I've ever had. 2 10-8 rounds, and then a finish in the 3rd round, and I basically blow out my knee. And then I had to come back from that. Like, I had surgery, and I didn't tell anybody I had surgery, and I was out for a long time. And then I tried to fight again, and I was really proud of myself for even getting back from that knee surgery. But then I fought, and I didn't win. It was a close fight, and it was a good fight. But it was like, there was my answer. It was actually beautifully divine. And I think that God was telling me, you did it. You did it, and you don't need to do it anymore.
Wow.
Invest in your family. Invest in your home, invest in your health, invest in this, because you've gotten all you've needed from this sport. This is what you came to answer, ultimately, was to find the best version of yourself. And it wasn't about winning, and it wasn't about losing. It was about finding the best me. And I got to do that. So what more do I have? What more do I need to do? Well, I tried to come back again, like I said, and I wanted to see if I could level up on that. But physically, my body just wasn't able to do the things that it had before. So, and that's okay. Like, I am at peace with that. I'm proud of myself for coming back, because it was a hell of a ride to be able to come back from that surgery late in a career, Yeah. So I did it, and I don't necessarily regret it, but now it's more clear than ever that, there's so much more to life. I'm not just Miesha Tate, the fighter. I've got so many great things going for me that the blessings are too many to count. So I've got to just keep listening to the way that I'm being guided to go. And women's health, learning all of those things.
Yes.
Like, all coming synergistically together is the direction that I feel like I'm headed.
I feel the passion. I see the purpose. I and I recognize you as the fighter you were and are and becoming. So the word fight and fighter belongs in the vocabulary. One of the few fighters to ever hold a title in 3 major contexts. That Triple Crown is just going to go X2 on you. And so I would just encourage you to say, I was a fighter. I am a fighter. I will always be a fighter. The context just shifts a little bit. You bring a mind, body, spirit to the game. Whereas perhaps maybe before it was the mind or the body and then the mind. So I appreciate the Trinity. No pun intended here. But it's high energy. It's high output. And you've given me a way to think differently. 2 daughters and a wife. I never once thought about it. I just thought they were cuckoo at times. So
right. And she's suffering, because she probably doesn't understand either why she feels trapped or in this, in this way. And so the understanding is the key. That's all that it is. It's just like seeing behind the curtain of the Wizard of Oz. You're like, what? Like at first you're like, this is crazy. And then you're like, once you have the understanding, you kind of just realize, okay, there's more that can be done.
This is great. Miesha, you've been very gracious with your time. We're coming up to that mark. Can I flip the script and have a little bit of fun with you on a rapid fire real quick?
Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome. So I'm going to hit you with 2 words. Love for you to pick the first one that comes to mind. We'll keep it short. Discipline or motivation?
Motivation.
Endorphins or mushrooms?
Endorphins.
Cupcake or savage?
Cupcake.
Technique or power?
Technique.
Peptides or whole foods?
Whole foods.
Training or competition?
Training.
Here's the last one. It took me a minute to come up with this one. Legacy or one more win?
Legacy.
Nice. Your story's still being written, girl. You're fire. I am extremely grateful for you, for Dr. E, for making the introduction, for all that you're doing on your podcast. If anyone listening would like to get in touch with you with regards to a speaking engagement, a consultation, learning more about what you do, how should one go about doing that?
You can go to my website, mieshatate.com, and there is a contact us on there. So that will get to my team for sure. There's also I think it might be under the Ask Me Anything. So that you could submit fan questions there as well. That's something that I really enjoy as I kind of bank those fan questions. And every once in a while on Built for Growth, my podcast, I will do a solo episode. I'll kind of update people or tell them a story about something in my past. And then I'll take some of the fan questions that I've received and I will answer them. And I get a lot of great questions. So either way, whatever you're looking for, you can go to mieshatate.com. You can find it there. You can also subscribe to my newsletter. Got some exciting things that are coming up that I think will provide great value. So yeah, I'm still in that transitionary space of, going from one type of fighter to another. So I appreciate everybody growing with me and I appreciate that support, and subscribing to my podcast is obviously really helpful. It's my passion project.
Nice.
We're a little over a year into doing this and I don't see any slowdown in sight. So just remember it's Built for Growth and it's on all the platforms. You can listen to it anywhere.
It's fantastic. High level output. I really appreciate the quality of the production and the content you put out. We'll include all of this in the show notes. Built for Growth. No pun intended, but it's something we can all stand to do. It's continue to grow in who we are and what we're doing. Miesha, friends, family, and cohorts, everyone out there enduring a fight, a flight, a freeze, a fawn, whatever they're into, stay the course. Re-listen to this podcast. Miesha has dropped the kernels of truth that we like to call the fact bombs that will arrest you and give you a roadmap to being a better person. But at the end of the day, as Miesha has reminded us, you got to put the work in. And so that work starts, as she had pointed out to us, with the mind, the body, and the spirit. You can't neglect any of those. And it all starts with perspective and staying grounded. Friends, family, and cohorts, and Miesha, Happy New Year, and thank you for joining us today.
Oh, thank you. It was my pleasure.